The Exterminator. My father was a harvester of grain, and one year he lost more grain to mice than he was able to keep for himself. I was his only daughter. I was able to domesticate nice, small, desert wildcats by feeding them milk and winning their trust with affection. Their presence kept the mice away. They are very special animals that have individualistic human characteristics of pride, jealousy, and curiosity. Later, the granary was invaded by termites, and I was able to use a special method to save the wood from being destroyed. Instead of trying to kill the millions of termites, I found their nest and killed only the one huge one who was laying all the eggs. I observed that, like ants and bees, the entire colony of these insects have only one insect who stays in the nest to breed. The other insects are just specialized to work in bringing the materials and food for all the hatching eggs. I lived near mineral hot springs that left a white powdered salt that some people used to mix with ground grain to make the dough rise when baking. By accident, I mixed sugar and this salt together as they looked so alike. The next morning, the open jar was filled with dead cockroaches. The sugar attracted them and the salt killed them. I became a very well-known person, sought after by many people with pest problems. One day I was bitten by a rabid dog and suffered a painful death. The daughter of a pot maker. I was born to a father who made pottery. His pottery was as round as he was able to form it by hand, with some rounder than others. My mother had the idea of putting the clay on a spinning table to make them spin so they could be formed and shaped more round and symmetric. My brothers, who were carpenters, were able to make such a table. It was not easy to make the spinning table as it had to spin very fast. My brothers saw that the wooden axle at the point of spin would get so hot that it started to smoke. Eventually it would get so hot that we could start fires with it. We sold a few of these fire makers to firekeepers. We eventually crafted an axle made of clay. The table was heavy and turned rapidly and smoothly without causing any fires. My father started making round, hollow, thin vases that were so round and so symmetrical as have never been seen before. Before burning these vases in the oven, I drew pictures on them. People thought our vases were so beautiful that with time our family became well-respected potters, making bowls and vases for kings and their families. My heart was more into wool and plant fibers and weaving it into thread and rope. I would use the thread to sew smaller pieces of leather together to make large blankets. Then I started to spin thread thicker and thicker. All this was very tedious to do by hand as it needed a lot of spinning. When I saw my brothers make the spinning table for the clay vases, I asked them to make me a spinning wheel for my wool and fibers. My children, as they grew up, helped me work my spinning wheels. We became very successful for our fine threads, strings, and strong ropes. Long after I died, my great-great-grandson developed a wooden machine that wove threads into cloth. He ended up making fine fabrics and clothing from silk for kings and their families. My husband became an ink maker. He produced black ink from charcoal. I often imagined how nice it would be to have colored ink especially for my fibers. He experimented with various plants, pulverizing them in alcohol to make different colored inks to dye my wool and fibers. My son later found out that colored rocks can be dissolved in plant oils to give an ink that water cannot erase. I lived to see my grandson become a painter so well respected that the king hired him to paint the walls of his cave.